Shalom, peace and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We are on our Romans chapter 10 chapter study, harmonizing the perspective that Paul is teaching with what was taught before him through Moses and the prophets. So we definitely are going to look at some interesting things in these, especially in the next two chapters. And we're going to clarify and make it clear and simple and allow you to see what Torah has been teaching us this whole time, what has been lost, and how Paul is trying to actually reiterate and express this actual reality, I would say. So let's get right into it. Let's pull up the scriptures right now, and we are going to see how much verses is in here, and we're going to read. So we have 21 verses. We're going to read it in groups of 7. All right. We're going to break it down afterwards. So it says here, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear them record that they have zeal of Elohim, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of Elohim. For Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes. For Moses describes the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which does those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is by faith, I'm going to stop right here too, because it's very important. The righteousness which is by faith speaks on this wise, meaning this is what the righteousness which is by faith sounds like, right? And then he goes into something very important that I need us to focus on. And we're going to look at that in the next set of verses, okay? So the first set of verses, it talks about what he desires for Israel, right? For his people, the Israelites, and how they approached Yah's law. So he's saying that they had a zeal of Elohim, but this is something very important that many people don't really understand or grasp, okay? It says, not according to knowledge. So this is something very important. Many of us think that because they were Jews or Israelites, that they knew or understood the law, or they kept the law or observed it properly. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is one of the major misconceptions that people have when trying to reiterate something that one of the Pharisees or Sadducees said, or even one of the disciples say, and they create a doctrine saying, see, this is what, they said he broke the Shabbat. So that means that he was doing things that wasn't supposed to be done on the Shabbat because the Pharisees said he broke it. This is not true. It says here that they have zeal, right? They put a lot of energy into doing what they believe is true, but it's not according to the knowledge that Yah gave. It's not according to the law that he instructed. You understand? So it says here, they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness, ignorant of his righteousness. How were they ignorant of his righteousness? They did not understand. The word ignorant does not mean, that they treated it bad. It means that they had no knowledge of Yah's righteousness, and they went about to establish their own righteousness, and they did not submit themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. So I want to first focus on these things, right? The righteousness of Elohim, the law, right? The desire was that they not lack knowledge anymore, but that they understand what Elohim's righteousness is and what it means, so they can submit to the righteousness of Elohim. So let's look at a few verses real quick that talks about his righteousness, okay? So Deuteronomy chapter 6, look at what it says here. It says here, verse 24, it says, Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our Elohim for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. It shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our Elohim as he have commanded us. So our righteousness is based off of what he commanded us. So what were they not doing? They were not abiding by the commandments and the righteousness that the commandments taught. They did not live according to that manner. In fact, Paul was saying that they were trying to live in zeal without knowledge of what Yah's righteousness was. And not only did they do that, they tried to establish their own way, and then they did not submit to the ways of Yah. This is what they did not submit to the commandments that before Yahuwah Elohim. This is our righteousness. This is our righteousness. Deuteronomy chapter 4, again, starting at verse 5, it says this: Behold, I have taught you again statutes and judgments, even as Yahuwah my Elohim commanded me, that you should do so in the land where you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them. This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. So remember what it said. It said that they were ignorant of Yah's righteousness, that they had no knowledge. They had the zeal, but they had no knowledge. They lacked the knowledge. It says here, the statutes and judgments that Yah gave to Moses was supposed to be given to the Israelites to do them, and it was supposed to express wisdom and knowledge, and that the nations would see that when they are living according to this statutes and judgments, according to these instructions. It says, which hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. This is the response that the world is supposed to have when looking at Yah's people. When Yah's people is demonstrating the understanding or the nature that comes inside of the law, the faith that the law requires, this is how they respond. This is a great nation. And then this is what they would understand. For what nation is there so great who has Elohim so near to them? Even the presence of Yah will be acknowledged by the fact that they're living according to this wise and understanding method of living. The lifestyle that's reflected in these statutes and judgments and these commandments. It says here, who have Elohim so near to them as Yahuwah our Elohim in all things that we call upon him for. And verse 8 concludes it. It says here, what nation is so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? Righteous law, right? Let's look at, there's a statement that Messiah made about the Pharisees as well. And this is something, so we see Deuteronomy mentioning righteousness in the law, the statutes and judgments. Look at this statement that Messiah mentions pertaining to righteousness. So he talks about his teaching. Yahushua said, my teaching is not mine, but is his that sent me. Meaning that whatever Yah said, that's what Yahushua is saying. If any man will do his will, then he will know the doctrine, whether it be of Elohim or whether I speak of myself. It says this: he that speaks of himself looks for his own glory, but he that seeks his own glory, he that seeks his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you, look at what it says, none of you keep the law. None of you keep the law. So the doctrines that come from Yah is being delivered by Yahushua, and he's saying I'm bringing the message from Yah. There's no unrighteousness in me. Did not Yah give you the law of Moses and none of you is keeping it? So you see this? Why would he say this if the law of Moses wasn't being kept by himself, right? And why would he say this if the law of Moses is not necessary? Many people teach that he was like chopping off laws while he was living, or that he was showing that it didn't matter. Why would he bring it to them in correlation with unrighteousness, right? Why would he bring up the law when he's dealing with unrighteousness? You see, there's a connection between unrighteousness and not keeping the law, and righteousness and keeping the law. So when we go back to what Paul was saying, let's go back to what Paul was saying. Paul was saying that he can tell you that they were zealous, but they did not have any knowledge about what they were supposed to be zealous for. They were ignorant of Yah's righteousness or the understanding of his law. And they went about to establish their own righteousness, and they did not submit to the righteousness of Elohim. Very important that we understand this. So we don't ever read any aspect of this and come up with a conclusion that the Pharisees and Sadducees was actually keeping the law properly during the time that Messiah came into this world. We need to conclude that they have not been. Even Paul is given record that they have not been keeping the law properly. Okay? Now, when we get to verse 4, look at what it says. For Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness. Usually they stop right there. But it says here, to everyone that believes. What is the end? For Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness. I'm going to see if I can show another verse just to show an example that it means something other than it's finishing, or the finishing of the law. Right? We went to Romans chapter 6. Look at what it says here in verse 21 and 22. It says, what fruit had you then in those things which you are now ashamed? And then it says here, for the end of those things is death. The end of those things is death. What does that mean? It says, now you being made free from sin, becoming servants of Elohim, you have your fruit unto holiness, and the end, everlasting life. Is it saying that everlasting life is finishing or ending? Is he saying that death is ending, or the end of those things? Death is the end of those sins, or everlasting life, the end, everlasting life? There's everlasting life is not an indicator that something is ending or stopping, right? This word end is the Greek word telos, and it means conclusion or the result. The conclusion or the result. Let me show you one more verse, Galatians 3, looking at verse 23. And it says here, before faith, we were kept under the law, shut up unto the faith, which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us to Messiah, that we might be justified by faith. You see that? The law brings you to Messiah. The law brings you to Messiah. After faith comes, after you receive faith, then you are no longer under a schoolmaster. Under a schoolmaster, I mean, the schoolmaster has authority over you, is telling you what to do. But now it's not telling you what to do because it's in you, right? It says, you are all children of Elohim by faith in Yahushua Messiah. So let's continue to look at this, right? This is the conclusion of the law. The conclusion of the law is to bring us to Messiah. How many people in this world still need to be brought to Messiah? But many people are using other methods other than the law. They can't even tell people what their sins are. They can't even tell people what Yah has come to deliver them from because they don't have any knowledge of sin. Romans chapter 3, again, if you want to, you could go back to this chapter and see it broken down more in depth. But Romans chapter 3, it says here very clearly, it says, we know that whatever the law says, it says to them that are under the law. What does it mean? So every mouth can be stopped and all the world may be guilty before Elohim. Therefore, by the deeds or the actions of the law, there is no flesh justified in the sight or made right in the sight, because the law is simply the knowledge of sin. What did the Israelites not have according to Paul in Romans chapter 10? Not according to knowledge. They did not understand the law. Because they did not understand the law, they were ignorant of Yah's law, and then they tried to establish their own righteousness. Let's look at one more verse before we continue. And this is what this statement in verse 4 is saying. Messiah is the conclusion of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes. The Messiah is the result of the law for righteousness, meaning the righteousness of the law results in Messiah, in accepting Messiah or receiving Messiah. Let's go to Psalms 119 verses, I think is 142. Let's see what it says. Yes, it says, your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is the truth. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is the truth. The righteousness of your testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. It's not just about doing some actions. It's about understanding the message within these commandments. Let's look at that, right? Let's see if this makes sense. The Messiah is the result of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes. Moses described the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which does those things shall live by them, right? And then it says this is the very important thing I wanted to show you guys. We're going to read the next 7 verses, and then we're going to break down verse 6 as well as 7 and 8. So let's start from verse 6 and read down to verse 14. It says, but the righteousness which is of faith, right, speaks this way. Say not in your heart, who shall ascend into heaven? That is, to bring Messiah down from above. Or who shall descend into the deep? That is, to bring Messiah again from the dead. But what saith it? The word is near you, even in your mouth and in your heart, that is the word of faith, which we preach. That if you shall confess with your mouth the Master Yahushua, and shall believe in your heart that Elohim raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart man believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture says, whosoever believes on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same master over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the master shall be saved, or the name of yahuah shall be saved. And verse 14 says, how then shall they call him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Okay, so let's break this down. We were talking about righteousness, right? The conclusion of the law for righteousness for everyone that believes. Moses described the righteousness which is of the law. Now, many times people are probably going to say or think that they're trying to separate what Moses described from what Paul is describing. Look at what he says. A person who does the law lives by them. And he says here, but the righteousness which is of faith speaks on this wise, means speaks this way. This is what righteousness which is of faith sounds like. And then he says, say not in your heart, who shall ascend into the heavens? Who shall descend into the deep? What saith it? The word is near you, in your mouth, in your heart. That is the word of faith, which we preach. Where is this excerpt coming from? Where is Paul getting this understanding from? He is reading from Moses as he describes righteousness by faith. This comes from Deuteronomy chapter 30, looking at starting from verse 10. It says, if you hearken unto the voice of yahuah your Elohim, to keep his commandments and statutes which are written in the book of the law, if you turn unto yahuah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. This is talking about faith. Is he telling you turn to Yah with all your heart, all your soul? That's talking about your belief. It's talking about your trust. So he says, for this commandment, which I command you this day, is not hard for you, hidden from you, hard for you, neither is it far off. So you see, he's talking about to keep his commandments and his statutes. This is not hard for you, which many people declare it's impossible. So he says, it is not in heaven that you should say, who shall go up to heaven for us, to bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it, talking about the law. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who shall go over the sea for us, to bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is near you, even in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. In your heart and in your mouth and in your heart. This is not something that you can do. You're not putting actual things in your own heart. You are receiving it from Yah. You are accepting it from Yah. Deuteronomy 6 says this. Deuteronomy 6. Well, there's a few things. All right. Well, Deuteronomy. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Is it Deuteronomy 30, verse 6? It says here, yahuah your Elohim will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children to love Yah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may live. So again, right here, it shows that Yah is telling you to allow him to circumcise your heart and the heart of your children, to love Yah with all your heart, that you may live, right? This is all correlating with faith. Faith you cannot obey Yah without allowing him to circumcise your heart, or without fearing him is to have faith in him, is to believe in him, is to trust in him. Look at what it says here in Deuteronomy 5. So the people says this in Deuteronomy 5, verse 27. It says, go thou near, hear all, this is what they're telling Moses to do. Listen to everything that yahuah your Elohim says, and speak to us all the things that yahuah your Elohim, our Elohim, has spoken to you, and we will listen to it, and we will do it. Now, Yah told Moses, he said, Yah heard the voice of the word that you spoke to me, and Yah said to me, I heard the voice of the words of this people, and they spoken unto you. that they have well said all that they have spoken. But look at what Yah knows about them. Oh, that there was such a heart in them that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it may be well with them and with their children forever. Why would he be saying things like this when it's impossible to keep Yah's law according to what people say Paul is teaching? Paul is not teaching the impossibility of keeping his law. He's teaching what Moses was teaching, that you need faith and understanding and knowledge on how to keep Yah's law properly by faith. This is what Paul is teaching, that the law points you to knowledge of sin. It causes you to see the things that you are lacking, the things that you need, and then it points you to the one that can help you receive those things. All right? This is what it's saying. The righteousness of the law, we read about this in Romans chapter 8 as well, where it says here, the law could not do that it was weak through the flesh. Not the law's flesh. The law don't have no flesh. Your flesh is too weak. So Elohim sent his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh. He didn't condemn the law. He didn't remove the law. He condemned sin, and he removed sin. And then he says that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. Now, we talked about this already. Righteousness of the law. What is this word referring to? Righteousness of the law. It means equitable deeds, G1345. That means is righteous actions, statutes, decisions, judgments, righteousness. You see that? This is what he's saying. That the equitable or the righteous actions of the statutes and judgments will be fulfilled in us, right? This word fulfill means, let's look at what it says. It says complete. It means accomplished. To furnish, right? That means to fill up. That we may be filled with the righteous actions of the law. This is what it's saying. That the righteous actions of the law might be filled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit. This is talking about the actions of those who receive the spirit, and by faith, they will manifest the righteous actions of the law. We read about that in Romans chapter 2. Now we're reading about it here. So when it says that Messiah is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes, he's saying that he's the result. He's the conclusion of what the law is supposed to point you to. It wouldn't make any sense you tell somebody that he's going to take away your sins, and then, he takes away your sins, and then you don't know what is defining sin. Let's look. Let me look at it. I wanted to think about whether or not I should pull this out, but let me see if I can find it real quick. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10, verse 9. Look at what it says. It says, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for the unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers. And it starts talking about all these sins. If the law is for all of these types of people that is in the world, this is why Romans 3 says that the world may become guilty. How will we tell them? It says, according to the glorious gospel of the blessed Elohim, which was committed to my trust. How will we tell them that they are sinners if there's no law condemning them? It wouldn't make any sense. you won't even have a message. You don't have a message to give to people when you're telling them, be saved from your sins, and a person doesn't even know what's the definition of sins. So let's finish this chapter, right? We're talking about righteousness a lot, and I want to make sure that we understand that when you look through the law, righteousness is constantly reflected. You know, it says, "You shall do my judgments, keep my ordinance, and walk in it. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall keep my statutes and my judgments. If a man do, he shall live in them. I am Yahuwah." Life, you're starting to see prolonging of life, blessing from the law. You're not seeing death, you're seeing life. It says, "Whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them shall be cut off from among their people." When you see people disobeying the law, then you see death. When you see people keeping the law, then you see life. It says here in verse 30, "Therefore shall you keep my ordinances, that you commit not any one of these abominable customs, which were committed in front of you, and that you defile not yourselves therein." Don't defile yourselves. The commandments is to keep us from polluting ourselves with wickedness and abominable, detestable things. So let's continue to let's finish the last portion of this chapter, Romans chapter 10, and it says this, right? Let's read verse 14. It goes along with the context here. "How shall they call on him whom they have not believed?" Is this talking about Israelites? Because Israel knew Yah, they believed Yah. Yah showed himself to them. "How shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? How shall they hear without a preacher? How shall they preach except they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the good news of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Yahuwah, who have believed our report?" This is from Isaiah chapter 53. Again, Paul constantly referring to Moses and the prophets. It says here, "So then faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of Elohim." What does that mean? You hear the words, you believe the words, you accept it and receive it. "But I say, have you not heard? Yes, verily, their sound went into all the earth, and their words unto the end of the world. But I say, did not Israel," look at this, "did not Israel know?" Right? Did not Israel know? First, Moses said, "I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are not a people. By a foolish nation, I will anger you." So it's interesting how he's quoting Moses once again to look at the reality of what's occurring now, showing the relevance of Moses and the prophets to what he's trying to teach them today. He's not trying to be around the bush. He's not trying to bring a brand new idea into play. He's trying to show what Moses and the prophets were teaching is manifested today amongst the people that he's talking to now. But Isaiah is very bold and says this, I found of them that sought me not. I found them that did not look for me, and I was made manifest to them that did not even ask for me. But to Israel, he says, all day long, I've stretched forth my hands unto a disobedient and gainsaying people. So this is what he's trying to express. The necessity or the reason why the extension to the nations is being given, and also calling the people of Israel to repent from their disobedience to come back to obedience. So where did Moses say this, right? So Moses said this by a foolish nation that will anger you. Let's see where that is, right? Deuteronomy 32, looking at verse 19 to 21. All right. It says, when Yahuwah saw it, he despised them because of the provoking of his sons and his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them, and I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very perverted or crooked generation, children in whom is no faith. You see this? This is what he was addressing with the children of Israel from the very beginning. Addressing faith and obedience is not a foreign concept in the time of Paul. Paul is not separating faith and obedience. He's trying to show them it needs to be combined in order for things to work. It's not working because they have a lack of knowledge, they don't have faith, and they're trying to perform laws. They end up doing it incorrectly. As Messiah said, they were giving the law of Moses and they do not keep the law. So they're developing their own interpretation of what Yah meant by his commands. It says here in verse 21, they have moved me to jealousy, that which is not Elohim. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people, and I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. So again, this is exactly what Paul quoted. Hosea, the prophet Hosea also says the same, similar things about provoking Israel because of their provoking of Yahuwah. The last two verses came from Isaiah chapter 65, just to show where Paul is actually quoting from, so people won't think that he's just not using the scriptures at all. He's just making his own books. Isaiah 65, looking at verse 1 and 2, it says, I am sought of them that did not ask for me. I am found of them that did not look for me. And I said, behold me, unto a nation that has not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all day long unto a rebellious people, which walk in a way that was not good, after their own thoughts. You see that? So he's comparing his approach to the nations with his approach to Israel and how Israel responded to him. So he's saying he's going to approach the nations now. See what I'm saying? So it's pretty clear. And we're going to go into, this is what brings us into chapter 11, which talks about the tree and the grafting in and what that actually means. Are they being grafted into Israelites? Are they being joined to other people? Or are they being joined to Yah with the Israelites? So we're gonna take a look at that when we get to the next chapter. I hope that this was clear. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a email. Send me any questions, and if you want to support the ministry, feel free to support this ministry. The more support will definitely be. There's a development on how frequent we're going to have live studies, live Q&As. Support the ministry if you can. Thank you for your prayers. Those who have supported, we appreciate it, and we look forward to the next study. Shalom, everyone.